Venus and star blessings, everybody. I want to talk a little bit further on Mars because yesterday when I uploaded a transmission where I touched on Mars, I mean, I had intended to come back and speak to Mars further, but I just realized this morning that because Mars is going retrograde at the 6th degree of Leo, it actually means that Mars will be in Cancer until April of 2025. So it's, yeah, just a tad more important than perhaps we initially thought. So there's a few things going on here. First of all, as I briefly mentioned yesterday, back in February, March of this year, we had an alignment between Mars, Pluto, and Venus in Aquarius. So that started a brand new cycle, okay, relative to those particular archetypes. And not only that, it was the first conjunction we ever saw, triple conjunction with Mars and Venus and Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. So that's a whole brand new cycle. And as time has unfolded, you know, Venus has been doing certain things and Mars has been doing certain things. And what's going to happen is Mars, as it proceeds in Cancer, it will form the opposition to Pluto, as I mentioned, and it will also square Chiron and the Sun. First, it will square Chiron and the Sun. The Sun will be in Libra. Then it will form its opposition to Pluto. And then it will get to, well, let's just have a look at this so I can visually show you. So if we take it to 21, that's where it forms a square to Chiron and the Sun. And just before I go on with showing you some more visuals, just keep in mind that there is a solar eclipse in Libra, and the solar eclipse in Libra, let me just show you actually, here it is here, is on the 3rd of October, okay? So look at Mars at 15 degrees, meaning it's square the solar eclipse, okay? And Chiron is in the mix as well. So not only do we have Mars going retrograde back into Cancer, but it also is involved in the solar eclipse, okay, which occurs, as I said, 3rd of October. So there's quite a big story playing out here. We've got the beginning of it was the conjunction between Pluto, Mars, Venus, February, March of 2024. And then we get back into the eclipse season, and Mars is involved in this solar eclipse, which is paramount because it's a solar eclipse, number one, and number two, or not even in that order necessarily, as I've mentioned, this particular solar eclipse belongs to a family of eclipses that are said to be extremely volatile and challenging when it comes to relationships. This is what Bernadette Brady says in her book, which speaks to eclipses. She specifically states that this eclipse can bring a lot of pain, sadness, separation, difficulties in relationships. So we have that understanding as the birthing of where this solar eclipse originates from, right? Which is about, what is it, 700-800 years ago, something like that. That's where it started. And that's what we always need to consider when it comes to eclipses. We need to consider, where was this eclipse born? What family does it belong to? And what is the description of that family? That description, by the way, she takes from reading the whole chart, you know, where that eclipse was born, basically. And that family of eclipses, as it continues to unfold over hundreds of years, will always have that baseline of what the chart looked like in the moment of the birth of that eclipse. It just carries on, basically. So, you know, you can see from that why we have these karmic sort of imprints or conditions or portals that you know just continuously unfold over hundreds and hundreds of years. So this solar eclipse belongs to a very difficult family of eclipses, and so the matters and themes that have been activated, particularly this year 2024, and I would say moving into 2025, are all very, very important passages for our growth, our evolution, and clearing a lot of karma. You know, it's clearing karma is quite a broad term, isn't it? What does that mean, really? It can mean a lot of different things depending on who you are and, you know, where you are in your evolutionary journey and so forth. But as I said yesterday, whatever presents, however difficult it appears or otherwise, it's always just an opportunity for us to, you know, have a clearer perspective and, you know, sort of become more conscious of the things that are presenting. Because when something presents and we have a response and a reaction to it, it's an opportunity for us to grow and move through that. And sometimes it is a release point, sometimes it is a separation and ending. Sometimes it's just a much clearer position and perspective to be in relative to your own growth and relationships. Remember, relationships are always a mirror. They're just a mirror showing us where we further need to grow, or where we have grown, or both. So this Mars in Cancer is a lot bigger than I initially thought. I mean, I always thought it was pretty significant simply because it is connected to the solar eclipse. I knew that, but I've forgotten that Mars goes retrograde, right? Goes back into Cancer. So let me just show you what that looks like. So this is today's chart, and if we progress forward, first of all, we have the eclipse, solar eclipse, okay, which is the day after, right? I'm showing you on the screen 2nd of October. It's the day after. Okay. Well, there it is there. Okay. It's just a little bit out by a couple of hours. I showed you the solar eclipse chart. So we've got the solar eclipse coming up. Mars is squaring the eclipse. Chiron is in the picture. You know, solar eclipses are huge portals of activation. What they do is they tend to stir the unconscious, things that are not seen in our conscious field. That's why they can be so difficult, because they bring up things that is beyond our control, and they typically manifest on external levels. For some people, a solar eclipse can be a real crisis point in their life. I've seen that over and over again with famous people, especially with politicians. I see so much activations with politicians, like things come and bite them really hard that they just didn't expect. And it's one thing that I've learned with solar eclipses is that the reason they can be, well, they can be, their nature is that they are quite difficult, generally speaking, but they can really make things more difficult for a person when a person is not acting in a congruent fashion, when they're not being honest, when they're not aligning with the truth of what is. So when people are being dodgy and bullshitting and playing games and manipulating and lying and, you know, being dishonest to people and things like that, solar eclipses will undo that individual, so to speak, right? That's why they're so difficult. And we've got, not only have we got a solar eclipse in Libra, which, as I said, speaks to unconscious things surfacing, so things that we just couldn't see and we're not expecting. Mars is in Cancer, which is also a very unconscious sign. it stirs up the emotional body, the unconscious emotional content and material. So it has a very strong, potentially a very strong effect because of that. So after the eclipse, Mars moves closer to that square to Chiron, which is here, 21 of Cancer, Chiron's 21 of Aries, and the Sun's 21 of Libra. So this is just an energy point. It's called a T-square, but it's really just an extension, if you like, of what began with the solar eclipse, right? About 2 weeks before this. Nothing is separate, right? And nothing is operating in isolation in the sky, in the world, in our life. Everything is connected in one way or another. The key is to have the ability to recognize these connections and see the opportunities that come up as a result of what is activated or brought to light or brought to consciousness, or gives us the ability to be more aligned, more congruent, more have a greater sense of perspective on things, right? But again, we are talking about some pretty difficult energies here, right? And let's not forget that the nodes is still in Aries and Libra. Okay, so this has been a theme of critical matters in relationships, our own personal identity, right? Being confident and clear about our own identity, and also understanding the versatile nature that exists around us in everyone else, and the different types of people there are, and the different types of relationships we have, which is Libra. So the Aries Libra polarity is the key to that, of course, is understanding who you are as an individual, right? But also being able to appreciate others, Libra. And so we've had these, multiple opportunities, pathways and journeys while the nodes have been in Aries Libra, which has been, 18 months or so, right? We can see Aries Libra is coming to a close. The nodes move backwards in the zodiac, so they're at 6 degrees here. So it's not too far away where they will shift signs, right? And so we've got this Aries Libra polarity that's been playing out for a while through the nodal axis, which is an evolutionary path on a collective level, and then, of course, on an individual level. And what are the rulers of Aries and Libra? It's Mars and Venus. And so we've had the nodes in Aries Libra, which are ruled by Mars and Venus, and Mars and Venus have been doing really important things, particularly this year, especially as they lined up with Pluto in their first ever triple conjunction in Aquarius, a sign that we've never seen before with Pluto. And then we have a solar eclipse in October in Libra, a sign ruled by Venus. Mars is squaring the solar eclipse. The solar eclipse family begins with a chart, a birthing moment that speaks to all relationship dynamics actually being quite difficult. And then as we progress forward, Mars goes retrograde, right? So let's get to that point. Before we get to that point, we can see that Mars sort of doesn't finish its cycle here because it goes retrograde, but it does form this opposition to Pluto. That's a powerful portal, an opportunity for aligning the lower will with the higher will, the soul. Look, that's not an easy portal. Let me just say that. We're talking about 2 planets of will. Okay, there is a reception here, though, to some extent, because Mars is the exalted ruler of Capricorn. So there is some kind of reception going on. Maybe that helps Mars a little bit because Mars is in its full position. In any case, Mars in Cancer can be very explosive. But, you know, depending on what's going on in our lives and so forth, we can really come to some type of clearer understanding about how we are using our willpower, how we are using our drive, you know, how we are using this energy to align and integrate towards our own sovereignty, right? There's going to be a lot of emotional pull behind it. And that's where we're going to have to be just a little bit careful, you know, with how we react and respond to things that piss us off, that upset us. Mars in Cancer, yeah, it just can be very, very explosive. And, you know, you can see the more difficult side to it. But it is about, I think the thing that the key with Mars in Cancer is integrating the polarity, which is Capricorn. And what does that mean? That means to, you know, it's not about shutting down our emotions. I think it's really important that we always honor our emotions and feel them and give them a voice and give them a space to move through. But that's not to say that, you know, we displace it and project it all around us, because Cancer is a very unconscious sign. Cancer can get threatened very, very easily. So think about the crab on the beach, right? It's got its little house on its back and it runs sideways. It's so cautious and so protective, you know, of itself. Its home, it's carrying its home on its back. So, you know, the evolutionary lesson for Cancer is always about integrating its polarity Capricorn. That is allowing to feel the emotion, allowing yourself to feel the emotion, but taking responsibility, Capricorn, for the emotion and not displacing it and projecting it left, right, and center, therefore not seeing what you are projecting and displacing. You know, you're just projecting all your emotional distress or upset or, you know, pissed offness, if that's even a word, which it's not, you know, around you, and not actually taking any responsibility for your own emotional unhappiness or discontent or dissatisfaction or whatever it may be. You know, we all have those different emotions and we all experience different responses and reactions to things that we don't like or we do like, you know. But at the end of the day, at the highest level at least, you know, we are responsible for what we feel, regardless of us feeling and thinking at times, I'm angry because you did this, or because you said that, or because you didn't do this and you didn't say that. Sure, that's natural to feel that, but at the same time, the moment we step into that way of responding and reacting, we fall into this manipulative pull, right? Where we're trying to basically put guilt onto another person, right? Because they made us feel like this, or they didn't make us feel like this. So we're putting all the responsibility on the other individual, right? And saying to them, it's your responsibility to make me feel good, to make me feel happy. And the moment you do that, your power is gone. Where's it gone? It's gone into the other person. But it's a manipulative loop and it goes nowhere. It's counterproductive. So the best thing we can do with Mars in Cancer is honor our feelings, allow them to rise, allow them to fall again, because that's what they do. They rise and they fall, they rise and they fall. And when they rise, that is an opportunity to monitor and observe what's rising and take responsibility for it, as opposed to just projecting it or displacing it. You know how you get people who just dump all their emotional baggage and shit onto you? That's what I'm talking about, displacing. That's a position of disempowerment, even though it's a manipulative game, because it's a game of control. It's a game of trying to induce guilt out of people and so forth. It's also a game of disempowerment. And so Pluto is about self-empowerment, the highest self-empowerment. And Mars is the servant of Pluto, really. You know, Mars is like a container, if you like, that projects through the highest will, which is Pluto, right? Now, if Mars is not aligning with Pluto, it's going to behave in a very self-centered, selfish manner. Mars is me, 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 me. What I want, I'll push you out the fucking way completely to get what I want. That's the unconscious side of Mars. But if we bring some consciousness and some responsibility, Capricorn, then we can be responsible for what we are feeling and take accountability and grow from it, right? Instead of playing that pool of, you know, manipulation and guilt tripping and so on and so forth. That's the worst side of Cancer. It can be, you know, when I think of Cancer, there's so many beautiful things about Cancer. It's the most imaginative sign. It's the most creative sign. It's got, you know, wonderful qualities about it. It's the mother, the all nurturing mother that wants to protect, you know, and keep one safe and keep their family safe. So that there is all of that, okay? But there is this dark side to Cancer where when it's not operating with consciousness, it becomes really controlling and manipulative. It's that controlling mother, you know, who keeps the children at home, even when they're 50 years old, right? By feeding them, by washing their clothes, by doing everything for them, keeping them codependent. Because once those kids or adults leave the home, the nest is empty. And then this Cancer mother, she's got no identity. That's one of the common problems with Cancer as well. So there's a lot of control stuff that can go on there, right? Manipulation, control, and so forth. And I guess we just need to think about, well, where is Mars transiting in our own chart? Because it's going to cover the houses of Leo and Cancer, okay? Pretty much from now until April next year, right? So let me just show you where it goes retrograde. 6 degrees of Leo. Okay, it stations at 6 degrees and 10 minutes, and then it goes retrograde on the 8th of December in Leo, okay? And as we move forward, by the way, as it goes retrograde in Leo, let me just, well, before it goes retrograde in Leo, sorry, I forgot to mention this. Pluto goes back into Aquarius, isn't it? So there's an opposition again with Mars and Pluto, but this one's not exact. Okay, Mars has already moved past it, but still, this is, you know, this is an important day, an important passage, because it's the same energy again, but in different signs, and it's not exact, so it's got a bit of a different feel to it. But I think again, this can be another opportunity as well. Now, Mars in Leo is like, you know, the personality on steroids, the ego on steroids. So that can be potentially pretty problematic in different ways, but it can also be great just for the ability to feel confident. You know, a lot of people lack a lot of confidence. You know, they don't feel encouraged to do certain things or to follow through on certain things or to express themselves in certain ways. You know, they feel intimidated or a lot more shy or a lot more introverted or withdrawn. You know, this Mars in Leo can help those sorts of situations in people. So there is that in the mix. So here it is going retrograde. And if we just keep going, as you can see, it goes back into Cancer. So we've got a long, long, long journey of Mars in Cancer. It goes right back to there it is. Right back to 17 degrees, stations at 17 degrees of Cancer. And so by 25th of February, it's stationing direct. And so it moves, you know, all the way back through half of Cancer again. Goes back into Leo by my birthday and many other people's birthday for that matter. So yeah, we're looking at basically around, you know, the 20th of April, right? So from now until the 20th of April, we've got this very important journey of Mars in Cancer, going retrograde, being in Cancer for quite a while, you know, a few months, connected to the solar eclipse, you know, as I showed you before, you know, forming the square to Chiron and the Sun, then later forming, or before that, forming a square with, you know, to the solar eclipse. You know, there's a lot of things happening here. So I guess from your own perspective, just think about some of the themes that I've highlighted, and wherever Mars, of course, is transiting in your chart, that is the area where these things will show up in one way or another. So then it is about interpreting everything that I've highlighted today from the perspective of where Mars will be transiting in your birth chart. That's the domain that will be highlighted, and it will be highlighted for quite a few months. It's going to have the Mars impact. It's going to have the Cancer sort of coloring of it, and then it's going to have the house that it's in. So it's got 3 layers to it in terms of what it's going to show for you. And also one other thing is, of course, if you are a sun sign cardinal sign or moon sign cardinal sign or ascendant cardinal sign, then, you know, this Mars is going to activate either your by square or opposition to your sun, moon, or ascendant, and that brings that transit in a much more personal manner again. Or you might be having a Mars return because you've got Mars in Leo, you've got Mars in Cancer. And if you are having a Mars return, then, you know, this will be quite significant because Mars is going through this retrograde cycle, right? So these are all important things to consider, and especially with the solar eclipse. You know, again, if you have a cardinal sign on the ascendant sun or moon, this solar eclipse, you know, will probably be felt more personally, I would say. So those are the main things that I wanted to touch on. And I guess from a collective perspective, Mars in Cancer will be certainly connected to matters pertaining to real estate, the market on the real estate level and things that are going on there. It's, you know, because we all know, right? And I can't speak for every single country, but generally speaking, from what I understand, you know, the cost of living, and that includes, you know, mortgages and rent and things like that. You know, we all know that they are completely taking the piss, right? They've taken it to the absolute hilt. And I think there's going to be some sort of shift and changes within that arena as well, because Mars in Cancer is probably going to be a lot of people being just absolutely fed up. I mean, people are fed up already, but this will enact some action, perhaps some necessary action around those sorts of themes as well, just as a side note. I'm signing off, and I will see you all very soon. If you enjoy my content, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and hit the thanks button. That helps me out a lot. Although not many people do hit it, it would be appreciated if people do. I know a lot of you can get free content here and there online, but the question you got to ask is, well, how can I put this? There's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about. Okay, let me just leave it at that. Okay, see you soon.